Hey, this is Matt once again. We're about to have videos of the paid requests. This time from Mr. BlockWorld. Thank you so much for that. And for those interested in requesting any type of videos, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both things are down below in the info box. PayPal is usually the best bet. But he wanted me, which I had this book for a while, but he wanted me to talk a bit about this book called Underexposed, the 50 greatest movies never made. And so we're going to go through this and give my thoughts on this and so on and so forth. Now, it's a very interesting piece of business to the research that are done, and then each one have these kind of fan posters. For example, Neil Blomkamp's Alien 5 from the get-go. So pretty much it goes into what possibly the plot would have been, what might have happened with it. And if it wasn't far enough to have a plot, then maybe conjecture on what could have been. In this case, Sigourney Weaver and Michael Biehn were going to be in it. Talks about how Neil Blomkamp posted a piece of alien art on Instagram with a one-line caption, "So I think it's officially my next film," and this was in 2015. He was a special effects artist and 3D animator. In 2010, he did the Landfall series of live-action short films based off Halo. I guess at one point he was going to do Halo, and Peter Jackson was going to produce it, but then that never came about. Came to a crashing halt. Blockhead has been vocally critical of his treatment at the hands of 20th Century Fox, more specifically Tom Rothman. Never wanted to work with the company again. So then he wanted to do a shorter, smaller film, and that was District 9. Well, it might have been a shorter film too. Then making Elysium and Chappie. This was going to be a legacy sequel like Halloween 2018. A direct sequel to Aliens. Sigourney Weaver was in Chappie. Michael Biehn was going to play Hicks again. He would have concept art. Chappie opened with a thud in 2015. It failed with critics and audiences. And Chappie definitely hurt a lot. Then in November 2015, Ridley Scott revealed his Alien Covenant plans. And there you go. So, and that's for me. It has a couple pages. Like this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, obviously some of these, it didn't even go far enough to have a full script. But like I said, it's very cool to have these posters. Like this is Batman Unchained. Joel Schumacher, you see Nicolas Cage, Jack Nicholson, and Tommy Lee Jones. It would have been the sequel to Batman and Robin, and how Joel Schumacher wanted to be a bit darker. Clooney, O'Donnell, Silverstone was all set to return to the streets of Gotham. The script would have seen Scarecrow release his fear toxin on Batman. In that hallucination, he would have seen the return of Jack Nicholson's Joker, Danny DeVito's The Penguin, Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, Jim Carrey's The Riddler, and Tommy Lee Jones' Two-Face. Conquer his fears of the past in order to truly move on. There was a darker side of Gotham. Scarecrow would be the main villain. Harley Quinn would be introduced. At one point, Harley Quinn would have been Joker's daughter. Well, I mean, they already killed Joker off, so... And she was out for revenge. Nicolas Cage was attached to play Scarecrow. Courtney Love for Harley Quinn. Peter Jackson's A Nightmare on Elm Street, The Dream Lover, which was a cool cover. I had heard of this story before, where Freddy was so weak, people would actually go in to try to beat him up, and like a dangerous dare. And Freddy got lucky at one point and That's why it shows like a crowd of people and people just going in to beat the hell out of Freddy. During one of these trips, Krueger once again reclaims his strength and terror over Elm Street by using the comatose body of an Elm Street parent, drawn back to Freddy's original dreamscape. The son of the possessed parent has to venture into the nightmare world to end Freddy's terror for good. Now, actually, before I move on, my thoughts on Alien 5, Neil Blomkamp, I would like to have seen it. A lot more than Alien Covenant. Because I love Aliens. You know how much I hate Alien 3. So for a film to replace Alien 3 and see a hopeful proper conclusion for Ripley and Hicks, even if it wasn't the best movie, I would at least there'd be some nice reprieve of, okay, it was great to see those tears again, and just anything to give a middle finger to Alien 3. I will obviously want this to be good, but Neil Blomkamp, at least he has a nice visual touch and style that would be at least make it interesting to see portrayed in the Alien universe. Like I said, an Ultra Alien 3 I'd be all gun-ho for. So I would like to have seen that. So obviously we didn't get it, because it's something I would actually like to see. Batman Unchained, I really did not need to see another George Clooney Batman film. He was not the right fit for Batman. Nicolas Cage's Scarecrow would have been interesting. Would have been neat to see a reappearance of Jack Nicholson, although who's to say he would actually say yes to it? And also, you gotta think about it, at this time, Jim Carrey was such a huge star. Jack Nicholson, you'd either have to pay them a lot of money, which they could still say no to. So who knows if you'd even get any of that. Also, to see Chris O'Donnell, George Clooney, and Alicia Silverstone after Batman and Robin to try to go a darker route, I don't think it would fit, and I don't think he would have gotten all those cameos. I don't even think Tommy Lee Jones liked working on Batman Forever, so who knows if he would even return. I don't know. That'd be a tall order, or way too much money that they would not be ponying up the budget for the. So I don't know if. I don't think that would have gotten made regardless of what Batman and Robin did, and I don't really think I would want to see it anyway. Nightmare on Elm Street: The Dream Lover. It's an interesting idea. The fact that Peter Jackson's going to make it, that would have been the most interesting part of it. Peter Jackson making an Elm Street film, that would have been very intriguing. That would have been very intriguing. I like the idea also of a kid, which it sound like a guy going to save his dad, like a rescue mission. So it's like a father and son story, which that would have been a nice bit of difference because we haven't seen much father-son stories in Nightmare on Elm Street. So I will like that approach, and this rescue reminds me a bit of rescuing Joey from Elm Street 3, but that being a big catalyst and only one guy to do it. And then Peter Jackson's style, or what kind of humor, what kind of gore he might have put into it, creativity. Just whatever you say, Bad Taste and Meet the Feebles, Dead Alive, they had creativity. So I would like to have seen that. I like Freddy's Dead for what it is, but I would like to have seen what this was the case, but that didn't happen. I like, this is an interesting cover, Oil and Vinegar, written by John Hughes, starring Molly Ringwald and Matthew Broderick. They say misery loves company, but misery wasn't ready for her. So that's one of the things I love about this book is they make these mock posters. I think that's very cool. I didn't like the Elm Street one that you see Because part of the plot is that again, kids go in like a dare, like skydiving. They go in dreams to beat the hell out of Freddy because he's so weak now and so pathetic. But he gets lucky and kills one of them, and his dream grows back. Granted, there's a party that's like, okay, well, how stupid are these people to do that, and why should I care if they die? But if the lead guy isn't a part of that, then at least give credence to him. Now, this one, Oil and Vinegar, pretty much it goes through John Hughes' history with films like Breakfast Club and 16 Candles. Sorry, I'm just looking through this real quick. Because it's hard to remember all this stuff because there's 50 of them. Two-person dialogue piece that would have brought two stalwarts of John Hughes' filmography together. Matthew Broderick, who was in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Molly Ringwald, who was in Breakfast Club 16 Candles. Broderick would have played a man driving across the country to his wedding. On the journey, he picks up the hitchhiking Ringwald. The pair end up stranded in a hotel room, spend the entire night discussing life and what brought them together. So, but very two-person, again, dialogue-heavy film. So John Hughes wanted to save the script for himself. And then some other stuff happened. Some kind of wonderful, some clash in production. Not too much in detail, but apparently the guy directed Back to School. He turned the film down. I guess there's really not much info you find, but the fact that this existed, I never knew about before until I looked at this book. The Little Mermaid, Sofia Coppola directing, which I can't show because there's nudity here. It would have starred Maya Hawke. What year would this have been? In March 2014, signed on to direct a live-action version of The Little Mermaid. Which there was one, but there you go here. I can't show this one because there's nudity too. But a David Fincher film called Ness. This would have starred Matt Damon and Casey Affleck. Based on Torso, a true crime graphic novel. A torso was discovered during an innocent game of Tad, setting in motion a cat-and-mouse game between Elliot Ness and the Torso Killer in 1930s Cleveland. This is the plot of the 6-issue comic book series Torso. In 2006, while busy working on the thriller Zodiac, David Fincher signed on to direct an adaptation of Torso. This set in motion his own cat-and-mouse game with the project, which ended up leaving the corpse of an unmade movie for all of us to find. So it goes into the Brian Michael Bendis, who wrote the comic, who David Fincher was, what was happening at the time. So again, it'll give like a synopsis of who these people are, who the players were, the time period, and then it goes to the project itself. Oh, Aaron Kruger is writing it? No, well, that was your problem. But Paramount was still feeling the sting of Zodiac's box office performance. It cost $65 million and only made $84 million worldwide. It wasn't really a blockbuster. Paramount let the rights to Torso revert to Bendis and Company. Fincher turned his attention to doing The Social Network, about Facebook, which was very successful. I mean, that would have been... I mean, I don't care about The Little Mermaid going back. Oil and Vinegar, whatever. I'm not Don't really care if that was made one way or another. Like I said, Matthew Broderick, I like as an actor, but not as a person. So I'm indifferent. This, I mean, would have been interesting. Elliot Ness versus a killer in the 30s. Never read the comic book. Now I'm kind of curious about the comic book. Matt Damon's a good actor. David Fincher, very capable filmmaker. I love The Game, Seven, Fight Club. Would have been interesting to see how this turned out. Back home, we don't play cops and robbers. We play Capone and Ness. Yeah, there's a little sidebar here. The studio wanted a sequel to 7 called 8 that would bring Morgan Freeman back as a detective with psychic abilities. Or he'd be partnered up with someone with psychic abilities. Thank God that wasn't made. They also have these little sidebars with a couple other films that were never made. Some of them I wish they were bigger, like John Hughes, The Bartholomew vs. Death. Sylvester Stallone and John Candy as feuding neighbors. I kind of wish that was a focus as one of the 50, because the 50 greatest movies never made. I'm sorry to Mr. Well, there's 3. Joshua Hull. If I did a poll, I think Bartholomew vs. Death would win over Oil and Vinegar. Which would you rather see? Sylvester Stallone and John Candy as feuding neighbors, or Matthew Broderick and Molly Ringwald talking in a motel for 90 minutes? Which kind of reminds me a bit of... I mean, it wasn't just that, but Forces of Nature. Just like Ben Affleck was going to a wedding, and then wasn't a... It was a plane in that, and then meet Sandra Bullock, and... Which that's an okay film. I think Bartholomew vs. Neff is what people would rather see. Little Mermaid don't give a rat's ass about. Ness would be interesting. Burnt. This is interesting. Keanu Reeves as a diva chef whose ego and hard lifestyle destroys his career. He sets out to reclaim his career and land his new restaurant 3 Michelin stars. David Fincher was going to direct. Although there was a 2015 film called Burnt. So that, well, David Fincher and Keanu Reeves working together on that idea, that would have been different. Cleopatra 3D with Catherine Zeta-Jones, Hugh Jackman, directed by Steven Soderbergh. I mean, I don't really care about Cleopatra, but that poster is pretty funny. Miss Cleo! With my voodoo magic man, I'm going to tell you your fortune. It's going to be bullshit. I mean, I can't go through each of these because it would take me like hours, but like in depth. This is easily should have been. I'm glad this is in there. John Carpenter's Shadow Company. I said before, this is one of those ideas I wish were made. Inspired by, well, written by Shane Black and Fred Decker, directed by John Carpenter, and more than likely starring Kurt Russell. And I love this poster. Impervious to fear, pain, conscious, even death. Shadow Company. I wish. It follows the recovery of the bodies of 6 Special Ops soldiers from a Cambodian temple 2 decades after the end of the Vietnam War. These soldiers are known as Shadow Company. The bodies are sent to the small town of Merritt, California, and once again laid to rest, this time with 100% less Cambodian spookiness. It's here we meet our hero, veteran Jake Pollard, who would have been played by Carpenter mainstay Kurt Russell. So John Carpenter, Fred Decker, Shane Black writing, Walter Hill producing, and State Pliston to kill some zombies. Shadow Company. They were experimented on by the government. There was a 7th member of the Shadow Company who went missing before the rest of the company was killed. That 7th member is Kurt Russell's character, Pollard. He stocks up on weapons and heads into the ready-for-Christmas town of Merritt. It's a Shane Black script, so of course the story is set around Christmas. The Shower Company has already pulled themselves out of the graves and begun their brutal onslaught on the town. Kurt Russell's theater takes out the shadows one by one until a final massive heavy weapon shootout ends the film. Vietnam veterans literally returning and waging war on small-town America during the most wonderful time of the year. Multiple issues during pre-production. It found itself buried alive. Whether they were creative differences or budgetary, we don't know. That to me is one of the biggest... I wish we got that movie. I wish. Because it would have been late 80s, early 90s. Would have been like after They Live. Man. Easily. So John Martvelez did it while you can. Yeah, I didn't know much about this film, so the director, Amy Adams, and the star don't really care. This Nicholas Winding referenced The Brining, which I like the film Drive he directed. Just one second, I'm looking over what the story was. The Brining would follow a private investigator who is brought on to investigate the hotel after mysterious events surrounding someone's death. It wouldn't stray from creating its own opinion and lore behind Elias Lamb. Now, Elias Lamb, I don't know what the story was going on around that time because I don't know who Elias Lamb is. Elisa Lamb. I don't know who that is. Tidal wave of horror tropes include devil worship, serial killers, and Elisa Lamb's angry spirit guides us through the remainder of the screenplay, which ends with the spiritual resurrection of Richard Ramirez. We look forward to your stay forever. The Brining. I don't know. Nicholas Winding Refn. I like Drive. I don't really like anything else the guy has done. He's not writing the script, so that could be a benefit, because when he writes, that's when bad things happen. Apparently, and this is the thing, when you read this, you find out other info. Drive was initially going to be directed by Neil Marshall and starring Hugh Jackman. And it talks about how that fell apart. And can you imagine that, Drive with Neil Marshall? But it wouldn't have the style. I mean, Nicholas Winding Refn, for all I say about his writing being piss poor, his style, especially in Drive, is exceptional. Peter Britt's Hellboy Silverlands, which would have been, I think, more about, trying to think, Abe Sapien, more his story. Troubled by a psychic connection to Princess Nuala from the second film, so he researches her and her brother. Here Abe discovers the history of the brother and sister, and doing so somehow brings Prince Nuala back to life. Agent Myers would have returned for the spin-off, as well as far more supernatural action. Would have been the first of multiple from the files of PBRD projects. So, there's going to be a spin-off with Abe Sapien. Which that would have been cool to see, because I liked the Abe Sapien character. Sadly, that did not come to be. Tim Burns' Monster Apocalypse 3D. So, I'm trying to think, was this, yeah, this one. And some of these I'm just going to show because it's hard to get to each one of them. It's already 25 minutes in. Steven Spielberg's Oldboy starring Will Smith. Can you imagine that? I like the poster. Look at that. Steven Spielberg's Oldboy. There you go. Will Smith. Well, he's got a hammer. At least it's not a slap. It'd be a reworking of the thriller and stayed closer to the original manga that ran from 96 to 98. Our hero will be jailed for only 10 years in the manga. There's no hallway hammer scene, and probably the most important difference, the daughter reveals only in the film. In the manga, she's a bar hostess who just happens to be a pawn for Goto's nemesis. Now, if you've seen Oldboy, well, spoilers for Oldboy, you find out that the lady he's been stooping is his own daughter, and that was part of this screwed up plan. So they would have taken that out. That would have pissed... I mean, people don't give a crap about the Oldboy that was made by Spike Lee. Man, people would have hated this movie. They would have been pissed. Mandy Pictures DreamWorks could not see eye to eye on what to do with the film. DreamWorks completely walked away. Spielberg and DreamWorks were hand in hand, so he walked away as well. So then Spielberg did Tintin. And Will Smith went to Men in Black 3. Now there was this Oldboy with Spike Lee, Josh Brolin, Elizabeth Olsen, Sharlto Copley, and it made a whopping $5.2 million worldwide. So, how much of that hit was that? So, I mean, this is, yeah. No one wanted to see that movie. The Tony Clifton story, of course, Andy Kaufman. I'm not as familiar with Tony Clifton as others. I know from clips, The Man on the Moon movie with Jim Carrey. So in a Tony Clifton movie, maybe it'd be more excitable for some. For me, I didn't care. Justice League Immortal, directed by George Miller, with Armie Hammer before he started eating people, Common, Adam Brody, and this would have been the poster. Okay, let me show these posters again from over here without the glare. So, there's that one. And this would be a long video, so screw it. There's that one. That one. And without the glare. That one. Little Mermaid, who gives a shit. Titties on that, can't show it. I mean, Catherine Zeta-Jones, I'm down with it. With her. Shadow Company, this is top of what should have been made to me. Should have been made. Okay, the Brining, that was the Nicholas Winding Refn one. The Abe Sapien spinoff, Hellboy, Silverlance. Monster Apocalypse. Oldboy. It was weird if it doesn't have the hammer scene, but he got a hammer in this poster. That's a fan, mock poster. And this is Justice League by George Miller. Or it looks better than Zack Snyder's film. So let me see if it says like what the cast would have been. Armie Hammer as Batman, Common as Green Lantern, Adam Brody as Flash, Megan Gale as Wonder Woman, DJ Catrona as Superman, Hugh Byrne as Martian Manhunter. Yeah, Aquaman, Talia al Ghul, Jay Baruchel as Maxwell Lord, Anton Yelchin as Wally West Flash. So there'd be so Barry Allen and Wally West were both in this movie or in the script. Batman spy satellites hacked, revealing the weakness of every metahuman on Earth. As you can imagine, this causes extreme issues for the heroes. We then launch to an action-packed film that sees Maxwell Lord uses psychic abilities to control Superman, proceeding to use him as his very own action figure, fighting any hero that gets in his way. Find Aquaman and his Sea Creature army, nearly killing Wonder Woman, and take on Green Lantern, who is forced to create a green Superman with his lantern powers to contend with the Man of Steel. Batman snaps the bad guy's neck. So much for him not killing. But the guy's mind jumps into the computer system and merges with Talia al Ghul, who orders the Olmec War to start. So there's the Olmec army. Barry Allen has to sacrifice his life. And then the young Wally West was available to join the newly formed Justice League. Would have been a $250 million budget. Writer's strike, location task credit issues, contract options running out, toss of creative differences, and the impending release of Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight. Well, there you go. What can you say? I mean, could it have been worse than the Justice League movie we got? Rob Zombie's The Blob. There's not a whole lot about the info, but I wish I found this book when I did the other video for Night of Snow. But if he sees this now, this is what I'm talking about. With like the poster, like this is what the idea would have been. Like a slime army. It's cool looking poster, but not for a Blob remake. My intention is not to have a big red blobby thing. That's the first thing I want to change. It's called the Blob, but he doesn't want the blob in the blob. People wonder why I shit on Rob Zombie. I want to do a remake of the Blob, but let's not have any blob in it. So we have a few other films, well, quite a few films here. Gladiator 2, which was, this was the weirdest one I read. That Russell Crowe. The story of this film. Well, the writer says, I enjoyed writing it, but I knew on every level that it was never going to get made. Let me see, where does it say what the story is? Maximus waking up in mud, his armor had been ripped off his body by a couple of thieves. A figure appears, steers them off, and reveals himself to be the Keeper of Peace, Mordecai. Jupiter promises to reunite Maximus with his family if he tracks him down and kills him. He finds himself back in Rome alive, and his son is also alive, preaching the word of Jesus. Lucius is brutally killing Christians all over the Roman countryside. Maximus joins the fight, and the Christians take on the Romans in a huge battle in the woods. He keeps This is why it's hard to know what the hell they were going for, because Maximus and his son kill Lucius. Then he finds himself on a battlefield surrounded by hundreds of crusaders in the Middle East. Then he's in a snowy, bloody, modern battlefield. Then he's surrounded by tanks and weapons where he's in Vietnam. Then at one point he's at the Pentagon. He's now the Secretary of Defense. War Through the Ages montage we just saw. So that would have been a montage of just, I guess, being immortal or going through all sorts of wars. Sword and Sandal to Vietnam. You know what? I almost want to see that. Russell Crowe going from Sword and Sandals to this. It's so crazy. I actually want to see that. If that was a Gladiator 2 we didn't, I'd be curious. But that, of course, that ain't what we didn't. William Friedkin's The Diary of Jack the Ripper with Anthony Hopkins. I mean, Anthony Hopkins is Jack the Ripper and William Friedkin doing it. That alone would have been intriguing enough. There was a second Ripper film in development at a rival studio, and that was From Hell. And it was released in 2001, and this was done development hell. Plastic Man by the Wachowskis, starring Keanu Reeves. That would have been interesting, because the Wachowskis doing something other than Matrix. I like Speed Racer, so if you have the energy and the insanity of Speed Racer in another project, then you got Keanu Reeves in there. And like, I don't know anything about Plastic Man, so it's like whatever. I'd be sure, go for it. Let me see. The entire film takes place over 2 days as turn the city into nothing but sludge. Our guy becomes a true hero and declares his name and spreads some good. Odysee didn't come to be. Films like Speed Racer was a flop. The Day the Clown Cried, which this actually did get made, to be fair. It's just never been released. Which actually, I think... Actually, this... Now... The film cannot be streamed before June 2024. That's funny, we're in June 2020. So, technically, I mean, that means any day now it can be shown. I don't know if it's going to. Maybe they're waiting for July to make sure. Alfred Hitchcock's Kaleidoscope. What if a Clockwork Orange starred the Rolling Stones? Catherine Hardwicke's Hamlet. Spike Jonze's Harold and the Purple Crayon. The Coen Brothers to the White Sea with Brad Pitt. Like I said, I'm about 40 minutes in, and I can't go into every single one of these. But yeah, Ridley Scott's I Am Legend. I mean, look at that poster right there. Arnold Schwarzenegger in a Ridley Scott film about I Am Legend. This Arnold. A blockbuster vampire movie? Come on now. The vampires, the hemocytes, inspired by burn and starvation victims. $100 million and rising vampire film from the director whose last film was G.I. Jane, starring the manager who's played a major part in cooling off Batman and Batman and Robin. So the studio got cold feet. They shut down Superman Lives. March 1998, it was shut down. Ridley Scott went to do Gladiator. And then Will Smith and Francis Lawrence later did this film, so. I guess my only critique is I kind of wish some of these were a little bit more fleshed out. Like, that's really one of my few critiques. Is like, okay, like this is about where Arnold was. Tell him about the story of G.I. Jane, which is the last film Ridley Scott did. But it doesn't really go in deep on what the I Am Legend script was. I do like to hear that there was a... Ridley Scott did not like the original script, so he brought in John Lodian. The first half was an almost silent art house film with minimal dialogue. Arnold's character roam around a deserted L.A. The hemocytes became bloodthirsty feral creatures. It doesn't go in depth of what the original script was about. That's what I mean. Sometimes some of this I wish it was gone a little bit more deeper, a little bit more further into some of these scripts or some of these ideas. It's like, well, I only have like 3 or 4 pages to work with. This I never heard of. Burst in 3D, directed by Neil Marshall. Produced by Sam Raimi. Terror grips you in a blizzard in 3D. From the director Dog Soldiers. Produced by Sam Raimi. Burst. A group of stranded travelers meet during a blizzard and are stalked by a malevolent force that makes people spontaneously combust. Our characters are literally picked off one by one as they try to figure out what is causing these people to explode in 3D. They end up at a military base and discover the culprits are aliens. But this didn't work. As in, the project appeared to still be in development as to 2012. Apparently Neil Marshall was going to direct The Last Voyage of the Demeter, which that film did come out years and years later, and it was lame. Someone asked, whatever happened to Sam Raimi and Neil Marshall's Burst 3D? The question remains unanswered. Neil Marshall went on to do Centurion. And again, that's the tough thing, is that some of these, no one's willing to talk about it. And that's the thing, like, it'd be nice to, like, approach Neil Marshall and, hey, Neil, what was the deal with this film? What happened? You know. Joel Carnahan was going to do a Daredevil trilogy. One set in 73, one set in 79, and one set in 85. Definitely an ambitious idea. In 2012, Carnahan had a scissor reel and a pitch based on Born Again, the comic. 3 films would take place again in those years. Definitely be rated R. Each film have his own identity. 1973 would be classic rock, 79 would be punk rock, 85 would be new wave. But Marvel Studios declined because Fox had a little bit of time because they didn't own Daredevil that long, and Marvel says, nope, it's ours now. Now, I like the Netflix show. I'm not big on Joe Carnahan, but who knows? Maybe he would have surprised me. One Saliva Bubble. Like, look how weird this is. Martin Short and Steve Martin in a David Lynch film. Not a big David Lynch guy, but one starring Martin Short and Steve Martin. A small saliva bubble escapes from the mouth of a guard at a secret government facility, resulting in a chain reaction that unglues an entire town. The guard's one tiny saliva bubble enters the exposed wiring, a countdown for an unknown weapon. The town is then hit with a laser 24 hours later, striking nearly every citizen in town. At the airport, the 4 leads, a contract killer, a laughingstock, a Swiss scientist, and a family man, are dramatically changed by this bouncing military beam, as the laser somehow switches their minds. This scenario leads to mayhem all across the town. The military eventually discover that what has happened, have to figure out a way to reverse the accident before permanent damage is done. And this would have been in the 80s. This is after Steve Martin had done Roxanne, Planes, Trains, Automobiles. Martin Short had done 3 Amigos and Inner Space. Production came to a halt when Dino De Laurentiis' group went bankrupt in August 1987 after a stream of box office letdowns. The company was $16 million in debt. So there you go. David Lynch went on to do a pilot for a TV show that became Twin Peaks. And there you go. I mean, that would have been interesting to see Martin Short and Steve Martin in that kind of movie. Would have been more unique and different. William Gibson's Neuromancer, directed by Vincenzo Natali. Which, that's the same guy that directed Cube. I mean, I've heard so much about Neuromancer, but to be honest, I never read the story. I mean, definitely a good talent behind the camera. Lord of the Rings starring the Beatles. Why not? I mean, Clockwork Orange starring Rolling Stones. Why not Lord of the Rings starring the Beatles? I'm not a Lord of the Rings fan, and I guess Stanley Kubrick at one point was involved. Quentin Tarantino's The Psychic, starring Bridget Fonda, which I remember hearing about that before, but I wasn't big on The Psychic. So, Rose McGowan in Barbarella, directed by Robert Rodriguez. Granted, Rose McGowan's a bit of a fruitcake, so not sure if I'd be gung-ho about seeing her as a star. Maybe someone else. And then maybe this is when Robert Rodriguez was not when he was worth a shit. But because this would have been after Grindhouse, but Grindhouse was a big bomb, so it didn't happen. Tim Burton's Catwoman, Michelle Pfeiffer. I guarantee it would have been way better than the Catwoman film we got with Halle Berry. It was announced in June 1993. Tim Burton was weighing his options before committing to the film. pretty much Batman Forever made a lot of money, even more than Batman Returns, and I guess people thought, well, do we need a Catwoman film? And then Tim Burton went on to do Mars Attacks. I mean, this one, I don't know if this counts, because I think this was just Tom McLaughlin goofing off, like, it was like an idea for 5 minutes, but Jason versus Cheech and Chong. Don't get me wrong, I would love to have seen this movie. It would have been like Abbott Costello meet Frankenstein. I love Jason films, I love Cheech and Chong. But I mean, I don't know, I mean, this was like someone was goofing off. They did Friday the 13th Part 6. Tim McLaughlin's thinking of ideas. Frank Mancuso pitched a Freddy vs. Jason film, but there were rights issues. Pretty much you just mentioned it to Frank Mancuso, and Frank Mancuso said immediately no. Especially after Friday the 13th Part 5, and now they tried to do something a bit different. So that's the thing, like, granted, I would love to have seen that film, but it was just like, hey, can we make this film? No. Okay. So there's really not much story there. But, I mean, hey, I guess enough to give a fun poster there, so there's that. The thing is, this was never serious. There was never a script. It wasn't even longer than 5-minute conversation, but there you go. Harmony Korine's Fight Harm. Ninja Turtles of this mutation, I've talked about this before. Kirby would be the 5th turtle, he'd be much darker. The Turtles from the 90s would have like different powers. Mikey would be more human. He could look like human. Donnie was like telekinetic or telepathic. Raph could turn to a monster. Leo could turn his skin into chrome. I'm like, Ninja Turtles don't need superpowers. I think it's pretty obvious why this movie never happened. Let's run it back. Blind Donatello. I forgot he was blind. Chrome Leonardo. Human Michelangelo. Raptor Raph. Rat Monster Splinter. Oh, there would have been an evil April as well as the good April. I mean, the mutations were done to, like, hey, would you sell more toys? Now, would you did alterations of these characters and sell more toys? Yeah. I'm fine that never happened. I didn't need that fucking movie. Robert De Niro and Martin Scorsese doing a film called Gershwin. It's Steve from Earth, and this is a beautiful... Look at that poster. That is a beautiful poster. It's Steve from Earth. It was worth a book just to get a poster like that. Like, look at that poster. The rocket ship in the background. Snake Plissken there. Stupid glare. That's great. But sadly, there wasn't... He doesn't really get into what the script would have been. A third entry was talked up. State get off planet considering the edges render all technology useless in the second film's finale. That's the thing. I wish he could have gone a little bit deeper on that. The future stapler was put on ice after a flop escape from LA. This one would see Pliskin already off of Earth and attempting to escape Mars. Pliskin is transported to a remote mining town only to discover the miners have been possessed by Mars ghosts. So yeah, Ghosts of Mars was supposed to be a Escape Pliskin film. Escape from Mars. Yeah, that would have been cool to see. I think that would have worked. I mean, I like Ghosts of Mars for what it is, but I think Escape from Mars with Escape Pliskin with Kurt Russell, I think would have worked a lot better. But I'm surprised like he didn't just talk. That's the thing, like it's Escape from Earth, but it's a cool poster. I'm glad that's there. But he didn't show any info on what the idea is. It didn't get any further, and that's the thing is that he writes a bunch of stuff, but you don't really learn a whole lot of info. So that's why sometimes these entries can be a bit lacking. Kevin Smith's Fletch 1 with Jason Lee. Is this the one with... Yeah, this is the one with Jason Lee. Which there was a Fletch film that did get made with John Hamm. I forget what it was called, but it wasn't this one. Guillermo del Toro's At the Mountains of Madness. Yeah, I definitely heard about that story for a while. Possibly Tom Cruise. The Man with Kaleidoscope Eyes, directed by Joe Dante. Like I say, it's a fascinating book to just look into projects you never even heard of before. A Vampirella movie. David Cronenberg's Total Recall before things changed and became Arnold Schwarzenegger's Total Recall, which I prefer the Arnold Paul Verhoeven film we got. Batman vs. Godzilla. Which, I mean, that poster kind of seals the deal, doesn't it? The dynamic duo will go to Japan. Does Commissioner Gordon and Barbara on vacation to Japan? There's a sinister meteorologist named Klaus who can control the weather. Secret layer of Mount Fuji. He'll destroy Japan if you don't get $20 million. They call Batman and Robin from the bat phone. Klaus has control of Godzilla. But it never made it to script form with no word from anyone on DC's side of things as to whether they have been approached about the project. Batman vs. Godzilla remains one of the most intriguing, bizarre films never to happen. Yeah. Patrick Lucier's Halloween 3D. Written by Patrick Lussier and Todd Farmer. That's a cool poster there. Halloween 3D. That's when 3D's like My Bloody Valentine 3D, which these guys did, and 3D was everywhere. Halloween 3D was to pick up immediately after Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, but then would bridge the gap between Zombie's Halloween and Carpenter's Halloween. How? There were nods to Bob's Ghost, and the Silver Shamrock commercial appeared on TV in the mental hospital where Laurie and our new final girl Amy are committed. There's a Halloween concert sponsored by Silver Shamrock. Feature JT and a Pumpkin. Michael Myers would wear the classic mask over Rob Zombie's mask. That's permanently burned onto his face. Like I said, I wish they would go a bit more deep on what these strips were. But I think one of the issues is the guy spends a bit too much time on Well, here's Halloween 1, here's Halloween 2, here's Halloween H2O. Rob Zombie's Halloween made a remake. I'm like, people would already know that. They could look it up. Go into the info at hand. This is who Patrick Lucy is. This is who Todd Farmer is. But go further on the details of the script or the ideas. Like, that's what people want to hear about the most. Now, like I said, for a guy like me, this is interesting to look at. But the thing is, it's cool to look at the posters. Granted, for me, this would not be the 50 greatest movies ever made. But obviously, it's based on personal preference. Like for me, how do you have a book like this and you don't have Isobar, Sylvester Stallone? Or the Stallone stuff like Fatalis, or Hunter, or any of that stuff in here. Jean-Claude Van Damme, Abominable, or some of the films I made there. There's just so many other films. Crusade. And that's why this book, it's a cool book. I agree. It is a cool book to look at. But you don't have Crusade. You don't have Isobar. Some other films you don't have. How is this the 50 greatest movies ever made when Isobar and Crusade are not in there? Like, to me, like, come on now. I'm on other projects. So, again, some of these projects, it's all in the eye of the beholder. Like Hamlet by Catherine Hardwicke, who gives a shit. You know, but you have Alejandro Jodorowsky's King Shot, but you put Dune in the lower corner here. That should be reversed. But I mean, like, stuff like this is cool. So it'd be like, if it was like the 50 greatest action movies ever made, and the 50 greatest horror films ever made, 50 greatest sequels ever made, I think that would have been a cool series of books to do. So like I said, I wish there was a bit more info on some of the scripts of these films. Some of his choices I would disagree on. But like I said, just even to flip through to these posters and read a little bit of info on stuff I'd never heard of before. It was cool to read. I don't read this much, though. It's not like something I read again and again, but at least for one time, it was worth flipping through. It was nice to flip through again here as well. I know that went too long for an hour, but I figured I would give detail, and let's be honest, there's some people who watch this that would never look at this book anyway, so now you know a little bit more about some stuff. So, take care, we'll see you guys later.